Ay, cosita linda, mamá. Soñaba, soñaba que me quería, soñaba que me besaba, que tú la dormí. Ay, cosita linda, mamá. Chiquita, qué lindo tu cuerpecito, bailando este meneíto, yo sé que tú me dirás. Ay, meneíto, a bailar. Anoche, anoche soñé contigo, soñé una cosa bonita, que cosa maravillosa. Soñaba, soñaba que me quería, soñaba que me besaba, y que tú la dormí. Ay, cosita linda, mamá. Chiquita, qué lindo tu cuerpecito, bailando este meneíto, yo sé que tú me dirás. Ay, meneíto, a bailar.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. My name is Noelle Figueroa, and I am the host of the P.W.P sessions. That's the Poets with Purpose sessions. And tonight is episode number 16, where I have the honor and the privilege of interviewing another awesome poet by the name of Talena Lachelle Queen. Now, before we get into the actual interview, I'm just going to make an introduction of myself and her before we dive right in. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just going to share my screen. Now, for those of you not familiar with this podcast, the P.W.P sessions, or the Poets with Purpose sessions, is a podcast that I created to interview poets one-on-one, to get more details about who they are and their writing, to get more familiar with them. Tonight is episode 16. As I stated, this is a podcast that conducts interviews with new or established authors of poetry, and there's an opportunity to feature a performance of their work along with an audience Q&A session. I'm your host, Noelle Figueroa. I am a poet, author, blogger, workshop facilitator, and event host, and I am the creator of the P.W.P sessions. Now, tonight's guest is another awesome poet by the name of Talena Lachelle Queen, and this is just a brief bio of her before we get started. Queen is the first poet laureate of the great city of Paterson, New Jersey, where she created the city's first ever poetry festival. She was appointed by the city's mayor to the Paterson Art Exchange, the official art commission for the city, and serves as chair of the commission. Queen is an inductee to the University of Washington Hall of Excellence. Her most recent endeavor is the recently formed nonprofit Wordseed Incorporated, which offers itself as a voice and a service for anyone that writes. Queen is also the founder president of Her Best Self, a program of the National Black United Fund that fosters leadership qualities in young women. Queen is also a columnist for Tapinto Paterson, where she has curated a space for critical conversations that offer perspectives which both deepen and elevate. The Paterson, New Jersey native earned her MFA in creative writing and poetics from the University of Washington, Bothell, where she authored 14. She is passionate about history, African-American culture, and social justice issues. She is often inspired by current events and is known to infuse music into her highly emotive poetry. She has earned a K-12 teaching certification and license in the state of New Jersey, a K-8 certification in the state of Washington, and specializes in middle-level humanities. Among her alma mater are Rosa Parks School of Fine and Performing Arts High School, where she earned her diploma in creative writing. Montclair State University, where she earned her bachelor's degree, where she earned her Bachelor of Arts in Broadcasting, University of Washington, where earned both her teaching certification and her Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing and Poetics, and University of Notre Dame, where she earned an executive certification in transformational nonprofit management at the Mendoza Business School. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's guest, Ms. Talena Lachelle Queen. Good evening, Talena. How are you? Good to see you tonight.
Well, I'm well. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
Awesome. Glad to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I'm going to start off with a question that I asked all of my previous guests. You know, it's a simple question. Who is Talena Lachelle Queen? How would you answer that? How would you describe yourself?
Well, Queen, we got to start with that. No, I am, I am a person with a big imagination, and I like to initiate new things that create artistic spaces for others. I gotta say I'm a mom. I really enjoy being a mom. I have 4 children and a grandson. And I'm a creator. I like to say artivist as well. Artivist is I'm an artist and I'm an activist, and I like to put that together and say I'm an artivist, and we're changing the world through artistic expression.
Awesome, awesome. Now, where did this all begin? Where would you say, or rather, at what point in time did you know that poetry was something that you would become passionate about? Like, when did it all begin?
Younger than 5, I knew my favorite poet was my grandfather. And I started writing my own poetry at 5 years old. And then I just didn't stop writing. And it was like a thing I had to do. So I was very, very young. It's been a part of my life longer than anything else, other than my parents.
Right, right. And do you recall when you first started writing, like what were the first subjects that you tackled when starting out?
Well, I can say, let me think. At 5, I was writing like like personifying animals, right? I was probably writing like Animal Farm, but I hadn't read Animal Farm yet, right? All these turkeys and animals could come to life and whatnot. When I went to Performing Arts High School, I was very aware of my artivism at 14, 15, 16 years old, where I would write about like what was going on in the news. It was whatever was politically and current news was really an important topic for me. I needed to talk about that. And love. Somehow we fuse those things together. So there's love and there's like social consciousness in my writing to a great degree.
Awesome, awesome. Now, what would you say was your motivation to continue writing? Like, you know, a lot has changed. Obviously, you're not the same person you was when you started out writing. You know, I'm sure you tackled, you know, over the course of the years, you know, you tackled different subject matter, you know, different emotions, different feelings. What was your motivation? What would you say your motivation was to continue your poetic pursuits?
Noel, I'm the kind of writer that does not have a choice. I can't not write. In fact, I tried it. It was undergraduate degree in my last year. So maybe it's like 1993, 1994. I said, I am just not writing anything anymore because I was having a real emotional pain in my life at that time. And I didn't want it in my journal because I didn't want to remember it. And so I still have the journal, in fact, that is empty with the dates on it to commemorate that year. But it was not sustainable because writing for me is healing. It is expression. And I've very often had very few friends. And so this was like my good friend writing. And so I really have to do it.
Yeah, so it's more or less become a part of you, more or less. It's almost like breathing, right? You would say that, yeah, that's the kind of relationship you have with your writing, you would say?
That I would definitely say that. There isn't a time when there hasn't a day doesn't go by when I don't have an experience that makes me think, oh, that should be a poem. And a lot of that stuff doesn't make it into poetry on any way that isn't fleeting, but my thought process is constantly in that motion. And your other part of that question was, how has my writing changed over the years? Is that right?
Yes.
So over the years, I'm pretty stable in terms of like inspiration. I have a muse that really speaks to those kinds of social consciousness things. And so I still write a lot about that. I still write about love, and I write about men, Black men in particular, because I love y'all. And so those are my subjects. And the good thing about that is that those things, though they are the same, are constantly in change. The current news, the current events is always going to be different.
Right.
And so, there's plenty of fuel out there for writing.
Right. Now, do you currently have any books of your own that you've published?
I do a lot of anthology. And then there's one that Prada has right now that they're laying out, but I was really often against publishing because I had an experience where I went to a cafe. I like tea. I was to a cafe and I sat in the chair, a red chair, and I relaxed, and right perfectly placed in front of this red chair was this beautiful painting. And I thought, why is my art on the shelf? And so I fought against that for a long time, even though I would publish in anthologies. So I started doing things like concrete poetry. I started doing poetry that infused music. That's a change because it didn't always infuse music.
Right.
That infused music, so it makes it more performative. And I started doing there's a poetry series that I did called Red. And so it's a permanent online space. So I published there and to websites. And my favorite is a poem called Heaven, which is poetry of a street corner. So there's this corner in Seattle where you can go and there's a QR code on the building. And when you use your phone to go on the QR code, then you hear my voice reading the poem about
Wow.
that
Awesome.
space. And so I really like the kind of poetry that can be an installation, but I know better now, right? I'm healed from that trauma of being on the shelf, and so Prada has my manuscript, and they're working on it now for release because
Awesome.
People keep asking for a Queen collection. So you're gonna get it coming soon.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
How would you describe, I know it's clear that you had hesitations about the book, but now that you're moving forward with the book, like, how would you describe the process of putting it together, like the process and your feelings involved in the whole project?
The publishers are amazing. Roxanne Hoffman is the lead, my connection there. She is a beautiful, talented artist herself, poet and singer. She may not call herself a singer, but her poetry sings a lot and it's quite lovely. And so she is the first person who I accepted as like, we have to put this together. And I was like, okay. So I sent it over, and that's all I had to do. She just took it from there. So she's amazing to work with because she's doing all the work. The layout design, the whatever it looks like. I have no idea actually what it's gonna look like. All I know is I sent the poems, and my expectation was that she might say, this one needs, she and Jack is in Paris. So, they were in Brooklyn, Paris duo. And so I expected them to come back and say, we'll take this one, not that one. This one needs some work, but they liked all of them. They said they loved all of them. So I was really flattered by that because they are both very accomplished, amazing poets in their own right. And it's an honor to have them working with my words.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And that's
Thank
a
you.
beautiful thing, especially when it's your first. There's something about that first book that, you know, I guess magical, for lack of a better word. I mean, because it's nothing like when you take that first step to actually produce something that's of your creation. Because I know I personally had that feeling when I published my first book. You know, there was a level of energy and excitement that I've never felt before. You know, actually putting my hands to something and actually seeing it tangible in my hand when it was finished. So I share in your excitement, I share in your passion, and seeing your baby, you know, come to fruition and having that, you know, final product in your hands. So I celebrate
Thank
with
you.
that moment, you know, and I'm looking forward to seeing it, you know, when it's
Thank
done.
you. Look, it's going to be great for all of us, right? Because I get to be a client in this case. I do a lot of creating, and in this case, I get to be, and I'm a teacher, right? So I get to like be a student and follow their advice and their guidance and really trust them. And I have no doubt about what kind of magic they might make. And I'm like happy to be a part of it. That's how I feel about it. I feel like it feels like a gift.
Awesome. That's a beautiful thing. Glad to hear that. You write about different subjects. Would you say that would you say that you have a preference to certain subjects more than others, or do you feel like you're on a mission to cover as many subjects as possible? Like where do you stand with that?
I get requests sometimes. Someone may commission a work, and so I write on commission, and also I write what the muse tells me to write. And I'm not on a quest to cover any particular thing. And honestly, I like this question because what is making me think about is about what I don't write about more than what I do write about. There are poets, and I'm jealous of them, I have to say, who get to write about like their mom's sweater, right? And it's important to do, and it's a nice thing. It's lovely. But my muse does not care about sweaters or punk rock or tides rolling in. Not ever. My muse is always talking about police brutality and talking about what it's like to love and what is it like to really feel that love taken away, and all the different ways that we get to be separated from our love, right? And as a Black culture, a lot of times that separation is just violent, and so and even the things that don't explicitly talk about love, I tell it in a way that is love. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
So
Definitely. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we all have our specialties more or less in subject matter. And, you know, this just may be, you know, your calling or your mission to speak on those subjects. And, you know, and that's something that there can never be too much of that. You know what I mean? When it comes to our culture and our people, you know, it's always imperative that we have voices that speak to those things, especially if they're coming from a perspective of your own personal life experiences that add to that scenery. I don't know if I'm using the right word, but you know, basically we need people to speak to those experiences. And I think it's awesome that you have this dedication, you know, to pour out your heart to address those issues, because you never know who you could be reaching, you know, with your words. You know, as you said, your words are healing, bring healing. And when
let me show you. Let me show you what I mean. Is that all right?
Sure, absolutely.
Let me show you. You look so good. Brothers, you look so good. Your afros, your brand new twist, your dreadlocks, your fresh cuts, your braids, your mustache, your goatee, and your leather bald head. You look so good in your baggy jeans, your Timbs, your blazers, your bow ties, your fatigue, your cotton tees, your dashiki, your kufi, your tela pants, your silk shirt, your team jersey, and your starter cap. I think it's sexy when you bite your bottom lip, you stroke your chin, you raise your eyebrows, you put your thumb in your belt loop, you suck on your Altoids, you only wear one ear of your earphones, you like to rub on your diamond stud. I admit I'm flattered by your corny pickup lines, your straightforwardness, your quiet respect, your let's just do this style. I know it's hard to be a man, and I envy you not. You gotta support the ladies, teach the babies, raise the nation, carry on the heritage, set the standard, and avoid the authorities because you fit the description. But you look so good. So this poem, you know, it has that strong twist in the end, right? It's a celebration of Black men, right? You're fitting the description, but we have all of these different types of hairstyles, clothes, ways of being in that space. And at the same time, you fit the description and you got to avoid the authorities. And so I'm saying, I'm addressing this social problem about Black men constantly fitting this description and turning it on its head. Like they do not fit the description. They all look so different and you look good, right? And it's saying at the same time with a great amount of love and reference for all of you.
Right.
So that's what I mean.
Right. It's awesome. And it's awesome how, you know, you have a way with words that's just phenomenal, if you don't mind me saying so. I mean, your words just grab the listeners and the readers' attention. So very impressed by that. Now, who would you say we are writing inspirations, like overall? Like, are there any poets in particular that just move you when it comes to, you know, being inspiration for your own writing?
That's not easy. I want to talk about Toni Morrison though, because when I was doing my MFA, I had read Toni Morrison, of course, like, you know, that's, you know, canon work, but I hadn't read this particular book of hers called Jazz. And at the time I was writing a manuscript called Blue. And my thesis advisor said, have you read Jazz? And I was like, what do you mean? She said, I'm gonna assign this to you. So I went and I bought a whole bunch of Toni Morrison and I sat with her Jazz. And page 119 made me so upset that I threw the book down because it was a totally different story than I was writing, totally different characters, totally different everything, of course, right? But the cadence was the same, right? Let's imagine diggy da, 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 right? You think you made up diggy da, 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 right? And then you pick up a book that was written 20 years ago, and the book says diggy da, da, da. And we're like, what? I was like, what? How is it? I felt like my man was cheating on me, is how I felt. Right. And I threw that book down. And I was so confused, but I learned something. And what I learned was, I don't know where that sound is coming from. It's not me, is it? What I learned was that Toni Morrison, who wrote that book, had recently read Jean Toomer's Cane. And I too had recently read Jean Toomer's Cane. And his book was based in gospel. I'm sorry, I gotta find out. Is that on this side? I have my phone in my hand and I don't know where that's coming from. I'm just gonna ignore that. So, is it on? It goes the computer. There we go. I apologize, but it's worth it, right?
That's okay.
Yeah. So I had recently read Gene Toomer's Cane as well. And so his book plays with gospel music. And Toni Morrison, as the name says, she was playing with jazz, and there I was playing with blues. And aren't they all evolution, right? And how it goes is like Gene Toomer was writing in the early 1900s, and Toni Morrison writing in 1990s, and I was working on that blue in like 2010, 2014, around that time. And so I learned that writers in our culture stand on each other's shoulders and progress the same way that music progresses. And this is the reason why we have the influences that we have. And so I have some connection to Toni Morrison, some connection to Nathaniel Mackey, and some connection to these phenomenal writers who are complex in their storytelling and complex in their poetry, but also like it's a very simple human thing to just have these regular stories, life, and emotions. And so those two people in particular really influenced me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, I'm quite sure you've heard, whether it's through the media or otherwise, a lot of conversation about representation, the importance of representation. Now, as pertaining to yourself, how important do you feel it is to represent yourself in your totality through your writing? Now, you're obviously dealing with many different facets of yourself. You're obviously a woman, you're obviously a Black woman, and you're dealing with other factors pertaining to, race, ethnicity, culture, so on and so forth. How important is it to you to make sure that you're representing yourself in the fullness of yourself, in your totality?
That's a place of evolution for me. When I went to graduate school for my MFA, of course, I was the only Black person there, but I was in an inaugural class, so they got it right the first time, right? And my cohort could write without having to represent their whole culture. And while I was writing, what I noticed was there was often a question for me to talk about those people who wrote before me, who influenced me. I had to include my ancestry every time. And I said, why can't I just be Talena Queen for a moment? And what I learned is that there's no such thing. Because while I was writing, I needed to be a representation for Black women, a representation for writers in the canon. I needed to be a representation for little girls who may be looking to do what I'm in the inaugural class, breaking this door open for the possibility for them to be there. I needed to be thinking about also the university, right? My chair, my advisor was the chair of the whole department. So like there's a pressure for the university, there's a pressure for scholarship, right? I'm an educator, so there's an expectation that what I'm doing is not simply art, right? It has to have a purpose. That's your name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Poets with Purpose.
Yes.
And yeah, it's not easy. And I think that because my muse is the one it is that's often talking about these topics that are artivism, that it is unmistakable when you read my work that I'm a woman, right? You look so good. It's not a man-to-man
Right.
conversation.
Right.
I hope that answers the question. It's just like there's no getting away from it. And it's kind of like the other question where I was like, I'm feeling a little bit jealous about people who can just write about flowers. My flower poems, people die.
Right.
And I I I am Talena Lachelle Queen in a way that is always full. Like I don't get to show up as one aspect of myself ever.
Right. That's all. And that's an awesome thing because none of us are one dimensional, or
Mhm.
at least we should strive to be multidimensional. And I notice, the way you present yourself and the way that you write, you are in fact, a multidimensional person, no question. And with that being said, do you feel free with the way that you write and the way that you present your subject matter? Do you feel that you have the freedom to be yourself in your writing, or do you feel restricted in some way?
I feel pretty free. But this is because in my life, I have a lot of autonomy. For the longest time, there wasn't anybody for me to answer to, right? Even in the university, I'm the author. They have guidelines, they want to shape it, but there's an importance about allowing the artist to be an artist. And in my house, I'm the mother. Who has more authority than I have in that space? In my classroom, I'm the teacher. Like we have guidelines, but I'm doing what I think is the right thing to do. So there's freedom in that. And when it's time for me to set my pen, because I don't have a traditional editor, or I'm not trying to and maybe this is a handicap, so a disability, or something that's not um, um, perfect in its design, right? That I'm not writing like the Harry Potter series where J.K. Rowling has to be true to the audience. They have an expectation of what's going to happen, right? I'm not doing novel work, so I get to just write about something posiliquent today and write about the horrors in Charleston, South Carolina tomorrow, right? And so that's an incredible amount of freedom. But what I like to do mostly is create freedom for other people. I think that being first I have many firsts attached to me. And I think that's a responsibility. And so in that way, there's no freedom. Like I want to show up in a way that makes space for other people. And that's why a lot of the stuff that I do is creating venues for others.
Awesome. And it's very and I'm very, I must say that I am in awe and inspired by what you have achieved, and how and the way that you use your voice, and the way that you touch on those subjects, and in the way that you've made space, for others, to share their work in your own way, through Word Seed and through your other endeavors. So I applaud the work that you've done, and I wish you all the best in your continued pursuits of those things, because it's much needed. It's much needed, for especially in the times that we're living in. So I'm grateful to you for the platforms and the doors that you've opened for others, and I'm honored to be able to even have this conversation with you, to share, with myself and my audience, all those things that you have accomplished. That's nothing to be shy about. I'm very honored and inspired by you for all that you've done, and for all that you have contributed.
I appreciate those words. Those are very kind and very generous. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Now, at this time, ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment that I'm sure you all have been waiting for, as it is now time for Talena to take the mic. Now, Talena, at this time, you are free to share up to 5 poems. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I just want to take this opportunity to give you the floor, for you to give our audience, just a sample of who you are as a writer, and as a poet. So at this time, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity. I see that Mr. Gibbons is here, and I did an interview with When Humans Attack with him. Thank you, Robert, again for that. And Robert asked me in that interview to read this poem, and because he's here, I want to read 1A. It's for you, Robert. There is no comfort at 30,000 feet on a teacher's salary. The roads are segregated like the country according to race. which is also socioeconomic status. I look like seat 1A wearing my $10 jeans and had to have this sweater. All of the rich people in my front row seats smile at me when I stroll past. The middle class people in the middle add a wave to their smile like we're family. Even though, even though my people are shot for being Black. Like the guy in the news today, whose name we will certainly forget, even though he was shot at work, a security guard, by the police after he had done the tremendous job of stopping the gun-wielding bad guy at the club. He wanted to be a cop, the news article said. He is dead because he is Black, I read. I'm sitting in his seat in the back, 36A, when the white people who could be less wealthy than me walk from the middle or the front to use the bathroom or exercise or see the flight attendant or whatever. They say to me, I love how you wrap your hair. I say, thank you. Because it doesn't matter that my eyes were closed when they happened by. It doesn't matter that I was dreaming. It doesn't matter that I was dreaming because I am Black and in the back of the racially, socially, economically segregated plane, pretending to be my ancestors, even though my seat, my real seat, is 1A. The people in my seat all over this country are holding on to my seat with desperate claws. They are smiling and waving and shooting us to death. Nobody says, sorry for your loss. Nobody on the racially and socially economically divided plane is discussing bullet lynchings. The plain talk today is about wedding dresses, grandbabies, and business meetings. One lady who has the same ancestry as me sits between two friendly white men, but her plastic cheeks melts when she sees me. And I don't say anything. Her eyes, cuts my lips, and I don't say anything to her at all. Anyway, who can say gentle nothings about braids and hair wraps when our men are lying on the asphalt with our ancestry spilling out? Okay, not today. Today I grade papers and mourn in silence en route to my Seattle suburb second home. I will admire the art collection on the walls, peek out at the garden, and maybe plant a bulb for what's his name, who was bullet lynched today. I'm gonna read you a love poem now because, yeah, that's important to do. This is called Love Is. It's slow, it's a little bit slower, a lot slower than that last poem. Here it goes. When I think of love for my family, the ones that birthed me and the ones I've helped to come, I think of love that holds me. Being held is nice, really, really nice. I know that love is available to me. There is no risk in loving my mother. Oh, but this soulmate of mine is a deep, filling breath. When I think of him, water fills my eyes and my body knows to relax. My chest can barely contain the whelming that is happening there. This is just the thought of him. When I see him, I forget that anything else matters. And when I'm with him, I'm home. I love my mother. I enjoy her company. I like the proud mother look in her eyes. I have that look too. Oh, but his eyes. when he looks at me. He pauses. And I am more alive in that moment when he looks at me, paused like that. I know that he cannot describe his love for me. There is comfort in that knowing. What we have is more than love. It is pause. Haven't we done this before? Pause. Haven't we loved like this before? And I, catching his intentional looking at me, can't help, really don't want to help, but pause too. I love my mother todos los días, all day long, but we never pause. We move, we cook, we bake, we take pictures, we eat, and so on. Oh, but this soulmate of mine, we pause, we wait, we linger, we swell in our pausing, just looking at each other and remembering all those lives we shared together, even though we know that we have eternity. Okay, that's that. I'll give you something a little bit faster now. Oh, I mentioned earlier a poem about flowers, and so I will do that one. It's called Cigarettes and Bullets. Cigarettes and bullets. You take our men and leave us with cut sweet blooms and blossoms. They are fragrant and gentle on the eyes, delicate yellows, pure whites and hues of red, but they cannot replace our dead. These flowers are useless. They don't last long enough. They don't laugh or hug. They don't smile for pictures and don't make good company at dinner. Our men knew what to do with flowers. Just the right one on a blazer lapel. Well, a picked flower in a boy's hand for his mama. And I apologize, bouquet. These are appropriate uses for a flower. Flowers can't hold babies or carry groceries. Flowers don't dream. Flowers don't love anybody. Flowers don't have any feelings at all. Not a single flower ever raised a family. Nope. Who are you to take God's gift away? It is not okay to replace a father, a nephew, a brother, an uncle, a grandfather, a cousin, a friend with a seedless bloom. It's not. So now, we have our memories, these funeral programs, and a whole room full of flowers. And I'm gonna do some Brown Girl right here. Yeah, let's do Brown Girl. This is Brown Girl. This is one of my, this is my mother's favorite. Brown Girl. You don't have to cry no more, no. Today, the eyes looking at you will judge you for the color of your heart, no matter the color of the eyes. Your grandmother and her grandmother knew nothing of the skin-free joys of your life. Every single walking step for them tested their spirit. They prayed that the precious Lord would take their hand, lead them on, let them stand. They were tired, yes. They were weak sometimes, true, but they persevered, Brown Girl, for you. They prayed that someday their trial would end, yes. You're still a babe now, not far removed from the suckle of your mother, but light years from the mulatto, nappy, colored, and second-class citizen labels of your foremothers. Now, you're a girl, simply, free to play, to dream, to sing, to inspire, and to be whomever you decide. Brown Girl. You don't have to cry no more. No, leave your eyes clear to see the ways through the fights of your generation. we have left much work for you to do. Leave your mind clear to find the ways that we did not know needed changing. Leave your heart free to soar beyond the stratosphere and discover worlds that we dared not dream about. Leave your anger alone. Replace it with the triumphs of a 2-century-year-old war that your foremothers fought for you to be free of tears. Brown girl, you don't have to cry no more. No. Celebrate your skin, your hair, your hips, your waist, your backside. Hold your head up high and let your smile glisten. Brown girl, you don't have to cry no more. No. So I think there's just one more poem, because I think that might be 5. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I think I want to do this poem, You Cannot Silence the Ocean. All right. You cannot silence the ocean. The waves are reborn again and again and again and again. The waves are dancers leaping toward the shore with splendor unmatched by any other body of water. Capable of both ballet and tsunami, the ocean knows the language of every tongue, but always says the same soul-soothing sound. She is a lullaby for angst and anger and anxiety. She inspires the constellations to stand sur le pont. Every ocean lover knows that the ocean, in all of her vastness and width and depth, can never be totally understood, knows that she is both capable of crushing the multitude and being a dwelling place for those who need her. The ocean is created for a divine purpose, a purpose with the diversity of a repertoire, one that shifts with the phases of the moon, is obedient and on course toward her destiny. Poetry is the ocean. Every poetry lover knows that in all of her vastness of creativity, with the scale of emotional expression, depth, and diversity in her repertoire, that above all, she is on course toward her destiny. You cannot silence the ocean. The waves are reborn again and again and again and again. Shh. All right. Thank you, family.
Wow, wow, wow. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the excellent poetics from Miss Talena Lachelle Queen. Talena, thank you so much for sharing those poems. Very powerful, full of such imagery and emotion. I don't know about anybody else, but I definitely felt every word that you said from those poems. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for enjoying them.
Awesome.
Poets don't get to, this is a new thing that you've created and that others have created, where you get to have feedback. Usually a person has the book from the shelf and they read the poem by themselves, and the artist never knows what they think of it. So it's very special what you've created here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm glad to be able to, create a platform for others to, to take part in sharing their work. That was something that I've always been passionate about. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have this platform to share with fellow poets such as yourself. Thank you so much. Now, at this time, as we draw to a close, I want to now jump right into our audience Q&A session. Oops, sorry about that. Okay. Now, at this time, if there's anyone in the audience that has a question or a comment or for Talena, you can feel free to unmute yourself and give your question or comment. Now, I noticed in the chat, Robert Gibbons has said These questions are the question and answer period. I like the idea about taking poetry to an unlikely place. How can you encourage future writers to take their work in unlikely places?
I think the first thing we have to do is be an example. When we create the example, then people will imitate that, or they will be inspired with their own idea about doing that. And let me tell you an instance where something like that is going to happen. Walk By, which is a Jersey City organization who prints their poetry and art on big vinyl sheets, will have those shows. There are 3 shows that will be at the Patterson Poetry Festival. So you'll get to see poetry at the Poetry Festival. That makes sense. But you have not seen them on panels big on the walls, hanging from in spaces, the way that I imagined that art. Remember that day I told you about? And so we
Yeah,
get to see this poetry and art hanging on in the different spaces at the festival. So that's one way we can do it. We can be good examples, and being an example, like you talked about earlier, Noel, about being a representation that will encourage others to bring their poetry to unusual spaces as well.
awesome, awesome, absolutely. And speaking of the festival, why don't you take this opportunity to share with our audience, for those that may not be familiar, what is the Patterson Poetry Festival all about? Which, by the way, I am happy that I will be a vendor at the festival for the very first time. So I'm looking forward to connecting with you and everyone else in person there. I'm looking forward to an awesome event. So what exactly is the festival all about?
First of all, you are a very smart man for bringing yourself into that space as a vendor. You're going to enjoy yourself very much. The Patterson Poetry Festival family is the Super Bowl event for poetry. Every kind of thing that you know about poetry will be happening in that space at some point. There are, in addition to vendors, there are featured poets, and the lineup in 2 days. Come to the website and see www.pattersonpoetryfestival.com and look at the schedule and see the amazing lineup that we have there. Like the Ed MC, Tony Keefe Jr. is going to be there. He's coming in from DC. And we have Max Partha, who is an abolitionist kind of poet coming in from South Carolina. So amazing poets. Ambition, the poet who does this foster care advocacy and his artivism. Every kind of poet is going to be there in that space. So you have featured poets, you have open mic, you have slam, you have live music, you have art, you have master classes. We have something called Lit Row. So authors of poetry and other kinds of books will be there selling their books in a section that's all on their own. We have a car show and a cruise night. We have something called Grown Folks Only. It's very sexy poetry in a space across the street at the Essence Dance School. So that's going to be happening with live music. That's going to be really, everything I'm going to tell you is incredible, okay? We have the Maria Mazziotti Literary Gillen Service Award, which is an award given to people who are doing things like you're doing, Noel, creating platforms for others, producing their own work, and just being amazing. And that is a service to others. So we have something called the Literary Service Award, and the namesake is Maria Mazziotti Gillen, who has been providing that kind of space in our community here in Patterson and in America for over 40 years. And so then we have the poetry contest for the youth. Covent Press is adjudicating that. So Covent Press will be there in a big way, giving out books, and they'll be the judges for the kids, the youth poetry contest. And we'll have a little youth show as well. When Women Speak will be there. That's Amira Shabazz Bilal. They're doing a set. Listen, are you excited?
Oh,
If
beyond
you're not excited,
excited.
I'm not doing my job. It's October 1, 2, and 3 live. It's also virtual on the 2nd and the 4th, in addition to being live on the 2nd. So the festival is bigger than it's ever been. It's going to be incredible. It's incredible right now. We are 32 days away from the Patterson Poetry Festival. And I am very excited because, as I said, and I think you agree, it is the Super Bowl event for poets. So migrate from all your different spaces and come out and be in the space with us. You will not regret it. It's going to be incredible.
Awesome. Awesome.
October 1, 2, 3. Easy to remember.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm most definitely looking forward to it, especially considering the fact that this is my very first time attending. So I'm definitely looking forward to the energy and the excitement of that day. Thank you
That's
so
the
much for
important part.
sharing.
Energy.
Yes, absolutely. Now, before we close out, can you share with our audience where you can be found on social media?
Talena Lachelle Queen on Facebook. You say the whole thing like A Tribe Called Quest. Talena Lachelle Queen. And I am also on Instagram as Her Best Self 4440. You'll see my face, it will pop up. Those are the only, I have a TikTok because my kid sends me videos, but I made one video one time ever. And so I'm on there and people are following me, but I don't know why, because I don't have anything for them to see. But maybe I'll try to get into it and learn that tool. But again, I'm Talena Lachelle Queen there as well. And the wordseedinc.org is a very important resource for people, wordseedinc.org. Robert and I were joking about this. Word, you can remember that word. So go to the website. If you forget and you type .com, you will still land in the same place. Wordseedinc.org, wordseedinc.com, PattersonPoetryFestival.com. I'm Talena Lachelle Queen, and it has been a pleasure to be here with you tonight. And I'm looking forward to new friends following me and communicating with me and talking to me about how they can be a part of the festival or how they can get to the festival. And everything you want to know is right there on the website. So visit often. And one last thing, you can even buy joy on the website. It only costs $1. It's a way that you can give a donation. You can actually go to the website store and you can buy joy for the low price of $1.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you so much. Now, before we close, there's just one other thing that I need to do, because it's only appropriate that I take this time out to say thank you. First and foremost, thank you so much to my guest, Talena Lachelle Queen. Awesome interview, and definitely and most certainly awesome poetry. I was surely blessed, and I'm quite sure our audience was blessed with your poetics this evening. Thank you so much for coming through and sharing on my podcast. For those of you that are interested with connecting with Poets with Purpose, you can connect on Facebook through the Facebook group Poets with Purpose. You can also follow them on Twitter @PoetsWPurpose. And feel free to check out the YouTube channel Poets with Purpose for this episode, as well as past episodes of past podcasts, as well as past open mics and workshops. The next event is to be announced. I'm still in the planning stages of the next event, so stay tuned for that, for the future event announcement. For more information about Poets with Purpose or the P.W.P sessions, you can reach me at 646-372-6230, or you can email me at poetswithpurpose@gmail.com. All of my logos and flyers are designed by the awesome team at Eclipse Graphics. You can stop by their Instagram page @Eclipse Graphics NY. You can see samples of their work and reach out to them for if you need any work done for your own projects. And lastly, excuse me, for those of you that are interested in making a donation, you can do so through the following methods: PayPal, Tap Media Man, Cash App, $Anointed Pen, or Zelle, which uses my phone number as well, 646-372-6230. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Talena. This has been an awesome broadcast. This has been episode 16 of the P.W.P sessions. Thank you all so much. Have a good night and God bless.